Well, welcome to the home of Crosspoint Church. We're glad you're here. I am Brian, one of the most blessed pastors to be a part of this house. If you're not a part of our family, we're excited that you're here today to join us in what God is doing. If you don't know this, He has built this house. And the hands of God are all over this place, and it is always exciting to be able to tell you more about that. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, so you know a little bit about me as I talk to you about God. About 10 years ago, I had the great privilege to begin more study on just the Bible, the theological training. And I had already, 10 years prior to that, got my undergrad. It wasn't in biblical studies. It was for business, for those that were just wondering. And at that point, I had four of my five children before I would even finish my master's of theological training. I would have my fifth kid. We sold a house. We were living with my in-laws. Like, everything was pointing to this is a really bad season to start anything new like this. So if I have anybody that's about to graduate with their bachelor's, like, just keep on going. Don't take a 10-year sabbatical, okay? Though I did it. But I got to tell you that there was something that I learned in the process that was really, really intriguing to me. And the idea is an audit student. So here what was told to me. They said, well, you know, if this is a really hard season of life, then what you can do is just pick what class you want to show up to get the content that you want. So I can show up to hear the content I want, and then I can sit in the back and hear all the dialogue and all the questions and all the exercises. But I never had to be tested on the content. Come on, somebody. I'm like, there was no accountability to me having any type of comprehension to what I was actually getting. And, you ready? It cost significantly less. Like, if you've never heard about being an audit student, you're welcome, I guess, maybe. But I got to tell you something. At that time, I was like leaning into a cheap advantage. Is there a way that it would cost less for me to get some information? Because I knew that there was some advantage that I was seeking. I knew that God was asking me to do something for this advantage. But I got to tell you something. As your pastor, I'm proud to say that I did not audit. I went all in. And it was the hardest time of my life. Again, I had more kids, and I bought and sold a house, and I struggled. I wrestled. I tried to quit, like literally. I'd sat down with my professor of systematic theology, and I was like, I ain't doing this. This is bad. This is hard. And he looked at me, and he said, what's your expectations? So I lined them out. He goes, that's your problem. He goes, let's adjust the way I want you to see this. This is free right here. If you want to quit something, I dare you to sit down with somebody that has authority over you and loves you with a lot of wisdom in that thing you want to quit, and let them speak into your life first. It's easy to quit. And so it was really cool because I didn't quit, and I kept going, and I changed my mindset on it. And I read all the dang books, and I wrote all this awesome papers and all the debates. And ultimately, I got to walk across the stage and have 5 of my kids. You know, they didn't know what they were cheering for, but like, your dad's got on a cap and gown. That's cool, right? And ultimately, it changed my perspective on everything. Now, why do I tell you that? You're like, oh, because you just wanted us to know us. No, I want to tell you it this way. Because I believe that it's natural to want to just be an audit student. In fact, I'm going to say it this way. By the way, anybody that wants to do that, I'm not against it. But what I am saying is that I think sometimes we fall into, all of us, this idea of an audit Christian. Where we can pick and choose what content we want to hear. We can pick and choose what voice that we listen to. We can go to it when it's convenient, We're never expected to be tested. We don't have to be held accountable for any comprehension of God's kingdom that is there. And it costs significantly less. Is someone with me? An audit Christian. And I gotta be honest with you. Maybe I'm inviting you some in, but I'm exposing myself. The reason I wanted to be an audit student, because being an audit anything is just deep in my soul. Show me the easy way, please. Not the hard way, but can I tell you that is not God's plan for you, and it's not God's plan for me. I want to start with this statement, that God desires active participants of his kingdom, not audit students of his kingdom. Active participants, and what I want to do is I want to unfold what does it look like? What does it look like to be tested in your faith? What does it look like to be held accountable in your faith, to be examined, to be humbled, to be sent out and glorified God in everything that I do, to multiply and to teach other people what you're learning? What does it look like to move to being an audit Christian, to being an active Christian? And here's the deal. We all have lies that we buy into, and that's why Paul starts his letter in Romans the way that he starts it. He shares the truth in chapter 1, and then the rest of chapter 1 and chapter 2, he exposes lies. The lies that are so easy for us to lean into, the lies that might be deep in all of us that we're going to have to wrestle with. And Paul wants you to know about a third lie. So today we're looking at lie number 3 in Romans chapter 2. Lie number 3. In Romans chapter 2. And here's what that lie is. You ready? It is pursuing the right set of rules that make you right with God. This is a lie. That there out there in the universe is a right set of instructions that make you right. There's a right set of information, and we're good. And listen, the reason, if you never knew, this is the reason that there are so many world religions. Because everyone's seeking the right information to make them right with God. The term for this is legalism. We're going to talk about legalism today. And I know everyone in here is going, whew, that one's not me. And you're like, the last lie was moralism, right? Here's the difference. Moralism, you look at people to make yourself right. For legalism, we look at information to make us right. And I got to be honest, I struggle with this. And I think you do too. Because we want to know, what is it that makes me feel good? What is the set? So this is going to talk about laws that were given to the Jews, God's first people group. And I'm going to try to unpack this so that we understand what it is for us today. I'm telling you, when you understand active, it is about transformation, not information. If you want to write that down, God's heart for your life is transformation, not information. So, if you would dive in with me. Starting in verse 12, and we're going to get through the rest of chapter 2. I will skip some verses. Some of you guys are like, how long are we going to be here? You'll be out. Okay, I'll get you home. Here's what it does. Romans chapter 2, verse 12, as we dive in this idea of the law and information, he says this: all who sin apart from the law will also perish apart from the law, and all who sin under the law will be judged by the law. What is he saying here? He is saying this: you are accountable no matter if you have the full law or you have limited law. I'll put it this way: you're accountable whether you have all the information or some of the information. And this is really important that you know this. Now, the law was talking about Moses. Moses gave the instructions. The prophets gave the instructions, Old Testament. And the New Testament, the instructions played out, and then the church was formed. And so there are these instructions or these laws that whether you have them full or whether you have them limited, you are held accountable. Like you see this in our own justice system, right? Like you are held accountable even if you didn't know the law. You guys with me? Like this whole idea like, oh, I didn't know. Try that next time. I don't know. I didn't know. Like I've tried it. There was no speed limit. Somehow we must know what it is, right? There's no defense system to being ignorant. So this is how he's starting. Information is not a bad thing. It just can't stay there. Now, what does that mean for us today? This is what it means. Did you know the church, by the way, Crosspoint, we say this is our home. We have instructions that are God's instructions for this house to operate properly. We would say we have a strategy for our family to be the most mature followers of Jesus that this city has ever seen. Isn't that a great vision? And what we do is we say things like, hey, we're going to hold a service every Sunday for you to come to. And you know why we say that? Because God says, no, do not neglect meeting together. It's just God's instructions. And then we say you should find a group during the week. Because you shouldn't just hear a monologue, you should dialogue it. In fact, I can tell you that you don't really truly know something until you can dialogue it with somebody else. And then the Bible talks about living a generous life in giving. And we say as a family, thank you for giving. Because everything that's happening here is because of your generosity. And then we say things like serve, and serve here in the church, and then serve out of the church. Guys, those are instructions, right? Or as the Bible would call it, these are laws. And whether you sit in this room right now and you go, oh, I've never heard those four, or I'm so tired of hearing of those four strategies, right? At the end of the day, they should be pointing us back to the heart of God. But can I just throw out something that I think is so true with all of us? Most of us only know instructions that come from the voice of man and not the heart of God. And so the challenge that I want to unfold with this today is what happens? What does he continue to say here so that we can go, whoa, those instructions are good. Thank you, Pastor Brian. Thank you, Pastor Tom. Thank you, Pastor Dean, for giving these instructions. But if you only do them because we tell you to do them, can I tell you something? It's called legalism. Oh. So we're going to keep reading. Next verse, it says this. For it is not those who hear the law who are righteous in God's sight, but those who obey the law who will be declared righteous. So now he compares this word obedience and not just knowledge to action, right? To righteousness. So here's what I'm going to make sure you understand. You understand what the word obey means. Obey is connected to righteousness because you can only truly obey God once you surrender to God. Let me put it this way. Obedience, the actual definition of obedience is surrender and willingness. It's not just doing. It's actually connecting yourself to God, being willing to surrender everything, and then out of that, I begin to do something. It's connecting to the source. It's connecting to the source, and then there's action that follows. And he says, listen, this is the difference from being not just a hearer, but a doer. Because you have surrendered, your obedience comes out of your righteousness because you're right with God. Do you guys understand this? And the thing is this is the problem with information is that it's easy to go, well, I just can't do it all. Pastor Brown, we can't come to church 52 weeks out of the year. Come on. You want me to get in a group every semester? Right? You want me to serve every week? What rock are you living under? Right? Here's the reality is what you're saying is what the rabbis even tried to do in the Old Testament. It's really interesting because they knew you couldn't perfect the law. That you couldn't obey everything. Like you would just mess up. So you know what they did? They go, okay. Here's how you're good now. Because you can't obey it is if you would just be a student of it, you're good. If you can just be a student of God's word, you're good. And then people couldn't do that either. What do you know? And then they said, hey, okay, now it's not just being a learner. If you just have possession of the law, you're good. And then people can do that either. And then it was like, if you have a family member, I mean, I don't care if it's like your third cousin removed, but if they have the scroll, you're good. Can we be honest? Is that not the reality of today? We keep weakening the law because there's something natural inside of us that just wants to be an audit Christian and not an active one. There's something in us all that just says, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so everything that was a law or an instruction just gets weakened. Can we be honest? Let's play church strategy again. This is fun. Because it's just what you know. It's when you read law, you understand church strategy. So we have a weekend service, 9 and 10:45. Congratulations for making it to the early one. Right? So we have this thing that happens every week. You're like, how does this get weakened? Would you know in the New Testament, they met every day. What? Well, how come you're making us meet once a week? Because we weaken the law? Some of you guys are like, this cannot be true. But we do. Acts 2. They met every day together. So what do? We go, well, yeah, you listen. We'll just meet once a week. Okay? We'll meet once a week. And so then we make that law, and then here's the laws that get made up. Oh, you know what? Like once a month. You can do once a month, right? Yeah, duh. Or this is a fun game, right? Some of you guys are like, this is not fun at all. Well, we go once a year or once every other year. Are you ready? My grandma used to go once a year. Do you guys see what I'm saying? We just continue to weaken the law because we feel something in our soul that says, there's got to be more, and I can't do it, so how can I make it to where I can do it? We do the same thing with groups, right? We sign up for groups, but honestly, if one thing comes up that sounds more exciting than a group, it is so easy to find an excuse not to go to group. I'm speaking out of my own conviction right now, not yours. If you have any, that's Jesus to you, not Brian to you, okay? Or how about serving here at the church? You know what we really are? Just put my name on a roll. Call me for an emergency. But if you do, let me know you win when you do it so I won't answer. Right? So you take this strategy and it's great instructions. I mean, everything is made from God. Serve people, love people, live generously, open your hands up, be in a group, monologue, come to church, be with the people. Those are exciting. But maybe you're like me. And it's just a law. It's just an instruction. And maybe you're like me. That has been weakened over time. And even if you do all those things, there's something in your soul that's not fulfilled. Can I tell you there's nothing like a church that's built on instructions. To keep creating instructions. Do you understand the amount of pressure that puts on pastors? I got to be honest. Because we go, man, we got to say it a different way. We got to do it. Let's just change. How do we make people feel good? How do we get people connected? And it's just easy to make new instructions, and that's not a bad thing. Here's the bad thing. When you are only connected to the instructions of God from the mouth of man. So I'm going to throw this out. What would it look like to move from being an audit Christian to an active Christian and actually go, what does God say about that? Can I tell you it was the best question someone gave me one time? I considered him a disciple maker. He discipled me, and he said to me, hey, what do you think about this? And I told him the answer. You know what my answer was? All the great strategy I learned from Pastor Tom. And he goes, is that what God says? And I was like, I hope so. If not, I got a lot of people to tell. His point was, man can say it, but you better know God's heart behind it. You better know God's heart behind it. See, God put his heart on humanity's heart, even when they haven't heard the instructions. Look what it says next. Such an incredible verse it continues to go to. It says, indeed, when the Gentiles who didn't know the law would by nature do things required by the law, They are a law for themselves, even though they do not have the law. And you're like, that is a lot. Here's what it says. They didn't know the instructions, but somehow they knew the instructions. Come on, you guys know that. Like when a church, hey, listen, show up every week. And you're like, that's so stupid, but something in me feels like that's what I'm supposed to do. Right? This is why we do things that man says, because there's something in you that God has put in there that is true. But the problem is we have to go beyond man's mouth and go to the heart of God. He goes on and says this. It shows they have requirements of the law that are written on their hearts, and their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometimes accusing them, and other times even defending them. Right? This is called the mind challenge. Right? You're going, he told me to do this, but I don't think it's right, but I should go. I don't know. He tells me to be good. He tells me to serve. Oh, I hate serving. I hate changing kids' diapers. I change my own diapers. Right? It's all, I got to hold a door up on somebody. What? People can't open their own doors anymore? Listen, don't think that just because we're up here preaching, we ain't thinking these same things all the time. Right? But there's something in us that does it. Right? All he's saying is, I love it. He says the Gentiles who didn't have the law, I put it on their hearts. Listen, God's law was never supposed to be absent of his heart and your heart coming together. I'm going to say that again. The law was never made to not engage and have an encounter with the heart of God. Never. Even to people who are not his children, he put it on their hearts. The question is, are you giving access to your heart so that you can attach to God's heart? When's the last time you've taken every instruction that we do and you say, God, I'm giving you my heart. I want to attach to yours. I want to know why this is important to your heart. When's the last time that we've said that? I want to encourage you as a pastor, you should do that to hold me accountable. Right? God, I want access to your heart. Here's mine. Now, it goes on and it talks about Jesus. Look at this connection it makes. I love it. He says, this will take place on the day when God judges people's secrets through Jesus Christ, as my gospel declares. One day, you will be compared to the life of Jesus, who did not just live the instructions because somebody told him with his mouth. He connected his heart to the Father's heart, and he lived out the law. See, here's what I want you to get about the law. The law points to Jesus, and Jesus transforms the understanding of it. Jesus will transform the understanding of every instruction Tom and I and Pastor Dean and Pastor Dude that we give you. Jesus will transform it if you hear it and take it to the heart. This is crazy. And I want to prove it to you. Because when Jesus gave one of his first messages, everyone says, it was like the greatest message ever. It was what's called the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5, here's what it says. Don't misunderstand why I've come. I did not come to abolish the law of Moses or the writings of the prophets. No, I came to accomplish their purpose. So I hear this too. Whoo! I'm New Testament, saved by Jesus. I have no laws. I'm just following what the pastor says because I like him. And he better stay likable or I'll go find someone else to like. We know what you're thinking. But Jesus said, hey, listen, I didn't take away the law. I accomplished them. Another translation says, I fulfilled them. Here's what he goes on to say. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not even the smallest detail of God's law will disappear until the purpose is achieved. Until Jesus comes back and it's achieved, no law will go away. It only gets fulfilled. That means it stays, but it changes. It gets transformed. So if you ignore the least commandment and teach others to do the same, you will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. This is why we don't like to teach people about coming to church, because we don't like to come either way. Anyways, that hurts somebody, right? Like, it's even hard. You hear, like, invite somebody. You're like, yeah, but I might not be there. I'm going to have to look at my calendar and make sure I'm 100%. Because this is the reality. That it's just this thing and we're not attached to the heart of God. And then I love what Jesus says. Sermon on the Mount, greatest thing ever. He says, but anyone who obeys the law, right, surrenders to God, takes what's on their heart, attaches to God's heart, and teaches will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Can I just tell you, you know why we teach you these instructions? Because our heart is on God's heart. And I believe it's the best thing for your soul. But I warn you, unless your righteousness is better than the righteousness of the teachers of the law and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, this is challenging. He says, if your righteousness isn't better than the people who have the law memorized, you'll never enter. Good luck. This is what Jesus just said. If you don't let Jesus transform the law in your heart because you've attached to God's heart, you'll never be greater than the Pharisees. You'll just be an audit Christian who weakens the law, not strengthens it. I'm going to say this again. The law apart from Jesus gets weakened, but the law with the heart of God and the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus actually strengthens the law. How? Well, Jesus went on. Read it when you go home. You know what he says? He said things like this. Hey, it's all about do's and don'ts. And I said, don't murder. And you're like, yeah, didn't murder anybody. Then he goes, but not with you. You're actually going to get to restore every relationship with someone that you're angry at. Wait, what? Yeah. Because you're not going to live in anger. You're going to be restored to everyone that you have anger issues with. Do you think that law was weakened or strengthened? You know the answer. You're like, yeah, that's one that I don't actually respond to, right? He didn't in there. He says, okay. He said, don't commit adultery, but not with you. Wait, so we get to? No. We're going to strengthen it. You have power. Listen to me. You have power over your eyes to not look and lust after another person other than your spouse. You have control over your eyes because your power source is God's heart. I don't just not do something. I get to look at my spouse and think about serving her. That's what I get to do. Strengthens. He didn't just end there. I'm going to give you two more because I think this is powerful stuff. He says, my draft came out. I didn't miss the tithe. Right? That's a good thing, right? Well, how do you strengthen that? He says, now the other 90%, be willing to give it to anybody who needs it. What? This is crazy. I know. This is hard. And he says, hey, I'm really glad you didn't retaliate. That was good. But not with you. I want you to pray for your enemies. Are you kidding me? This don't even seem natural because it's not. Like I'm so tired. Like I don't see how that's humanly possible. It's not. Because I've taken an instruction and I've said, what does this look like? Connected to the heart of God. But the tendency is selfishness. The tendency is to live in the lie. This is why he continues on in Romans. We're going to keep reading. This is what he says next. He just says, he goes, now if you call yourself a Jew. Now he's talking to the legalist in the room. We can all raise our hand, right? He says, because you call yourself a Jew, like you call yourself a Christian, you call yourself a Crosspoint family member, you call yourself he said, you call yourself a Jew, and if you rely on the law and you boast in God, and most commentary says what they meant by boasting in God was actually boasting in themselves about the fact that they had the right set of laws that God would be proud of them by, right? My church has the right instructions. I'm glad that Crosspoint just meets on Sunday mornings. Can I get a hallelujah, somebody? Whew, could you imagine? If you know this will, and is willing to prove what is superior because you are instructed by the law, and you are convinced that you are guided for the blind, that you're a light to those in the dark. Like you just believe you all that because you fulfilling everything, and it goes on. an instructor of the foolish, a teacher to little children, because you have in the law the embodiment of knowledge and truth. Here it is. Legalism clings to the lie that there is control, superiority, and security in your life just because you follow something man says. You know why? Because you can weaken it. Man says we show up every week. Well, good. I can show up once a month and I'm all right. Man says I should come to church all the time. Well, I think all the time is one time a year. That's what I think. It makes me feel in control. Because then we take legalism and then we tie it back to moralism. Well, at least I'm still better than my neighbor. You guys see what I'm saying here? And what we got to get to a place is saying, God, I'm going to surrender to everything. That I need my heart to change. And here's the very last verse, and we're about to be done. I want you to catch this very last verse in Romans chapter 2. This is what it says. A person is a Jew who is what? Inwardly, not outwardly. If you want to call yourself an active Christian, it's someone that is connected to the heart of God and changed. And circumcision is not circumcision of the heart. I skipped some verses on circumcision. You're welcome. I figured you knew what it was, okay? We're just going to go to the heart. That's a little bit easier to swallow right now, okay? Circumcision of the heart, by the Spirit, not by the written code. Such a person's praise is not from a people, but from God. Let me tell you, God didn't go on. I'm glad you went to church 50 weeks out of the year. He's saying, do you know me? Do you know me? Do you know me? Everything in me, I gotta be honest, wants to be an audit Christian. I just check the box. I'm good. But that is not the heart of God. External, anything external, right? No matter what you choose it to be, will never give you an eternal advantage. Nothing. The only thing is active faith in Jesus. Because here's what happens. When you take your heart, surrender it to God, attach it to His, and you learn that you can strengthen and live out supernatural things that are God's kingdom around everything else. Here's what happens. You ready? When your heart is attached to God's heart, people are on your mind. I want you to think about this. When your heart is connected to God's heart, people are on your mind. When instructions only on your ears, you are the only person on your mind. That's not even a slide. You guys need to write that down, okay? This is something you need to get. When the law is just something from me or from a pastor, you are on your mind. What do? Do I like this? Do I think this is true? What's it going to cost me? Do they know what I'm already doing? But when we attach our heart to God's heart, other people become on our mind. I'm going to prove it to you. We're not okay with being tested. Can we just be honest? We don't like tests. You don't like tribulations or irritations. No one likes tragedies. No one likes physical or spiritual attacks. But you know what those are? Tests. Because God will test His children. And if the instructions have not made it to your heart and other people are not on your mind, I'm going to tell you what happens. The current state of the church is what happens. I'm going to answer a question for you. Here's the question. What can tested faith do? I'm going to give you 4 things. I want to dream. I wanted to end this message to dream. Like, could you imagine? Can we play the game? Can you imagine? I just want to play this because I just think about all you sitting in seats. What happens if you didn't just come here because it was a strategy man had for you, but it was an instruction of God's heart for your life? Like, what would happen? What happens if I lean into being tested? Here's what it says in Deuteronomy. Look at a couple of verses, Old Testament, because I want to show you that God was even saying this to his first people group. He says, do not listen to them. He's talking false prophets. The Lord your God is testing you to see if you truly love him with all your heart and soul. God should have, he could have and should have closed the mouth of the false prophets, but he let them stay open to test us. What? You know what we do a lot? God closed their mouth. You know what he says to you? Engage with my heart. Oh. He said, I just want to know, here's the first thing that testing does. Testing faith reveals motivation. It can reveal your motivation toward God. Testing, when it's hard. Can we talk about, I don't know if it's too early or too late to talk about this. I'm just going to do it anyways. Let's talk about the pandemic. Can we talk about the pandemic? I don't know when the last time we talked about the pandemic. Yep, I'm bringing it up, okay? COVID, okay? You know what it did? It exposed the motivation of the church. Because the church just heard strategy as man's laws. Soon as isolation hit, there was something in you that didn't want to do this anyways. And so the church literally decreases by 50+% across America when this happens. If we were connected to the heart of God, you know what I think would have happened if we were tested? That we would have grew by 100%. Because you would have realized, God, it's on my heart. People are in my mind. I got to figure out how to do this. I don't care if it's on Zoom and you have Zoom fatigue. I mean, there was always a reason. Like, what would happen if we would have said, God, your heart, here's the dream. I'm going to try to do this fast, but maybe it's okay if I don't. Can we dream about weekly gatherings? What would it look like if you didn't come on Sunday because some man told you to? Or some woman told you to? What would it look like? Can I dream? You know what I think it would look like? I think it would be people who would get here 5 minutes early, not late. And that's not a punch at anybody. I'm telling you why you show up 5 minutes early. Because most of you all sit in the same seats you sit in every week. Yeah, you didn't think I could see that? Like every week, I know exactly where you're sitting. I know how you're reacting to what I say. I see your facial expressions. I know the people that are saying, hurry up, and the people that are like, hey, keep going. Here, because you sit in the same seats, that means you sit around the same people. That means you get her early, and you can't wait to look at someone's eyes that you know is going to sit around you and say, I've been praying for you this week. I'm excited to worship God with you today. That's what I think what would happen. I think we would figure out how to pray over the campus. We have a pit crew that shows up every week, and we can't get enough people that walk around our campus on Sundays to pray over every space. I want to say this again. We don't have enough people that are willing to walk this campus and beg for the move of God to happen here. I think there would be families that would own sections. They're like, Pastor, I'm coming at 9 on purpose because these people that sit in my section, I'm going to look at them and tell them that I just want to do life with them and I'm available for them. Listen, I could keep dreaming, but I think I got to be done. I think you can dream. I dare you to write, what would happen if you connected to God's heart on why he wants you to weekly gather with God's people? And well, by the way, it doesn't have to be under the lights or with a mic. That's a lie you're believing. Now, this is important, but I don't think the weekly gathering should have ever gone away. You find one other believer that you're encouraged by, and you meet with them, and you talk about God, and you pray together, and you seek the word together. Let me tell you what, you're having church. I dare someone to have church the other 6 days during the week. You know. Okay, he writes even more. I just want to dream with you. He says, remember how the Lord your God led you through the wilderness for 40 years, humbling you and testing you to prove your character, to find out whether or not you would obey his commands? You mean he kept them wandering for 40 years? Yeah, because he wanted to produce some humility. So number two, test of faith can provoke humility, which leads to character, which says, I need God and I need people. Could you imagine? Here's the imagine again. What would groups look like if we connected to God's heart and not just because man told you you need to find a group? What would it look like? What would it look like, right? Man, I really don't feel like getting out again. I really don't feel like getting my son a ride home from baseball practice. I really don't feel like having the hard conversation with my wife that she's going to have to go get some kids, that we're going to have to get friends involved, that we're going to have to get grandparents involved, that we're going to have to get ready, our community involved in the help of parenting somebody. If you parenting alone, that's not God's way anyways. It's just going to say, I need people. I couldn't imagine not being in a group. I look at all the men I'm connected with, I'm like, I couldn't do life without you. I think it would change. I think it'd be easy for groups not to just be a check mark. Meaning, I'm in Planning Center. My name is in Planning Center. I signed up. Do you ever go? I signed up. Do you ever monologue anything? I tell them I'm not coming sometimes. But rarely do I even tell him I'm not coming. Okay, he's not done. He continues, right? He said, he is humbled by letting you go hungry and then feeding you with manna, of food previously unknown to you and your ancestors. He did it to teach you that people do not live on bread alone. Rather, they live by the word that comes from the mouth of God. I love that he says he'll feed you with manna, an unknown source. He was saying, it's the day that you go, I'm hungry, I don't know how I'm going to eat. He goes, I'm going to feed you. Well, how? I'm going to feed you. I don't know how I'm feeling it. Listen, he's not even talking physical. He's talking spiritual. I just think about, could you imagine if the word of God wasn't just something that man told you on Sunday, but on Monday through Saturday, you just were hungry to read it? Like when I am working out and active, I am hangry. And I just wonder if we can be hangry. Like a desperate need for the Spirit of God to speak to us. I just imagine it going on your calendar. I imagine you fighting through your alarm because you couldn't imagine not eating. I imagine conversations that you have with friends and family. Because God's feeding you, and you didn't think he could. I'm going to give you one more. By the way, number 3 is testing your appetite, right? He ignites your appetite. Here's the last one I'm going to give you. For all these years, he says your clothes didn't wear out, your feet didn't blister or swell. Think about it. Just as a parent disciplines his child, the Lord your God disciplines you for your own good. Let me tell you what testing does. It enhances discipline. Can I tell you what I'm going to equate this to? Serving people that stink and bite and kick and don't deserve to be served. I'm going to tell you something, and I think it's important that it's coming out of my mouth and not Pastor Tom's mouth. Guys, we have people that can't come to church because if they didn't serve both services, we wouldn't have enough people in our children's department. We have directors that spend their week just trying to get people to show up. Because life happens, right? You're going to miss. But it's every week. There's always something else that keeps people out from serving. From serving coffee, from opening doors and being in the parking lot and being in here. Like I'm looking at our hosts back here in our welcome team. I dream of the welcome team having so many welcome team that they partner with you in a section and they can pray over and just be relational with anybody that sits in a section. But we don't even have enough welcome people to do that. We usually only have 2, so they have to stand by the doors. Like, I don't know about you, but if I'm starting to have other people on my mind, I'm embarrassed that my family can't have enough people to serve those that don't have one. And I just wonder if it's because we only do what we do because man tells us to. Like, we have Easter coming up. And yeah, I'm going to do an Easter plug. But I'm going to do an Easter challenge. That you use Easter as a time to say, I'm going to serve somewhere. That we have 100% of any hearers right now going, where do you need me to serve? I'm going to serve. Because God's heart says to serve. And here's the challenge. You won't stop after Easter. Can you imagine? I'm going to throw one more out because I'm on a roll. I may not, look, I hope I get invited back up here. But I'm going to give you one more, right? We accidentally have even weakened the instruction. You know what we say a lot? Just if you could serve once a month. Look, I'm going to tell you, I am weakening the law by telling you to serve once a month. Now, I get it. Sometimes you can't, but will you say, what I'm doing is because I'm connected to the heart of God and not the mouth of man? That what I'm doing is because I'm connected to God's heart and other people are on my mind. Could you imagine next week what it would look like if our family showed up with other people on our mind? Because God was on our heart. God, we love you. We pray for help of the Holy Spirit, for conviction, for accountability. Thank you for people to help us. Thank you for a family that's leaning into the heart of God. Thank you for a family that I can tell right now was engaged in listening and saying, God, I want it because you want it. Not because Pastor Brian wants it. Not because Pastor Tom wants it. Because you want it, God. This is your kingdom that we're building on this earth. And we will stand to be tested. Because, God, I do not want to be just one that will audit. I am all in. In Jesus' name, everybody.